Ari Shaffir is a Jew. I mean, Ari Shaffir has a stand-up comedy special titled Jew. And yes, he also happens to be a Jew. He also happens to be one of my favorite stand-up comedians. And for me, Ari's like not one of those huge comedy names that everybody knows. He's like, you know how I've heard people describe this, how when you have a favorite band that's like still underground, nobody really knows about, and then they blow up, and you're like, I used to be into them before it was cool. That's how I feel about Ari Shaffir. He is the first guest on the first episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, my favorite podcast, that ultimately led me to not only want to express myself within this medium, but have the balls to do so as well. But he was the first guest on the first episode of JRE that I ever listened to. And I've told that story before on here, I'm sure. And I described it as being like the perfect guest at the perfect time to get me instantly into it. And, you know, since then I've become a fan of his. I've been to a couple of his live shows. Of course, listen to Skeptic Tank. That's Ari's podcast. It's always a treat when he's on Rogan or when he's on any of the other shows that I listen to. I loved all the This Is Not Happening episodes, the show that he created before Comedy Central fucked him out of it. And he's actually putting out another travel-related podcast where he, you know, will speak to his guests on, you know, specific places that they've been to. And his interview style actually in Skeptic Tank is something that I definitely draw from when I've had folks on this show, where I like to take a deep dive on a specific topic that has to do with that person. And that's something that I got from Ari. But yeah, his latest stand-up comedy special is available on YouTube for anybody to watch. I will link to it in the episode notes and highly recommend it. And it's a really interesting concept for a special because the entire episode is dedicated to Judaism and about Judaism and religions in general to a lesser extent, but mainly Judaism, hence the title Jew. And Ari, in case you guys didn't know, grew up Orthodox, I believe is the correct terminology, and went to yeshiva, went to Jerusalem for a couple years for college to study to be a rabbi before ultimately, you know, losing his religion and becoming a stand-up comic. Seems like a bit of a left turn there, but thankfully he made it. And if I'm not mistaken, the concept for this special was born in Edinburgh, in England, where I believe it's in England, which is this yearly comedy festival that goes on. And while out there for this festival and taking in the English style of stand-up comedy, Ari noticed that there's always a theme for the shows that comics put on out there. You know, the theme could be, you know, about family. It could be all about your father, or it could be related to politics. But it's always like on one singular theme, which is different than stand-up comedy here in the States, where it's usually, you know, set up punchline. You know, you might have some storytelling and some longer bits, but not necessarily one overarching theme across the entire thing. So he kind of wanted to marry the idea of those two worlds because he kind of liked that theme idea, but wanted to make it more stand-up punchline, more funny, essentially, than the pseudo-comedy TED Talk stuff that was, and I believe still is, going on over there in England. And thus the Jew Hour was born. And this was pre-pandemic. I remember hearing rumblings of it, but because of the pandemic, it was never shot or recorded. And I feel like I think I've heard Ari say that maybe he wasn't even going to do it anymore, but ultimately he decided against it. And thankfully, like the material is not contemporary, right? It's not like current events dependent. So it's not like the jokes were stale or anything like that. And I thought it was fucking great. Definitely his best special to date. But yeah, it was a really cool concept for a stand-up special. And Ari's very knowledgeable of the subject matter, obviously, being Jewish and just having the perspective of both sides, you know, being deeply within the religion and then leaving it and seeing it from the outside looking in. Fun fact, well, not fun, but his father was actually a Holocaust survivor. And I remember Ari having him on Skeptic Tank very early on. And Ari's so good at what he does that he's even able to bring levity to that. You know what else I liked? The stage design, which was all candles, like actual white lit candles. of all shapes and sizes, just littered all throughout the stage, which was very apropos to like the subject matter. It gave it like a religious-y kind of vibe, and I thought it set the tone really well. And he definitely says some edgy shit, which you could always count on Ari for. And in one of his bits, he was speaking about how like some folks thought that COVID was like punishment from God, kind of like the floods back in the day and stuff like that. And he was like, COVID is nothing compared to like the floods back in the day when God like drowned the vast majority of all the people on earth and killed them all. He was like, that would be like COVID to the 9/11th power. And just using 9/11 there. It was genius. Then he's telling the story of Noah and, you know, the building of the ark and saving some people and animals when the floods were coming. And he segued from a story of Sodom and Gomorrah. And he painted the people from Sodom, the townspeople of, you know, committing sodomy and just people that were butt fucking all the time. And Noah coming down to warn them about the floods that are coming and stuff like that. And he was getting ready to save his wife and kids and all the animals, and he's telling them to come with him, and how they like shunned Noah because he's a pussy fucker and didn't just have ass sex like the people of the townspeople of Sodom did. And then Noah just walked away wondering, why do you guys hate me so much? Why do you always treat me this way? And then one of the townspeople of Sodom just yells out at him and says, "'Cause your dick smells like pussy, you fucking faggot." That's wrong. On so many levels, that's wrong. And so ironic and brilliantly written at the same time. My only regret around this special is that I did not go to the filming of it. And he filmed it in Brooklyn, here in New York. And I remember looking up the tickets. I could have gone. It wasn't a distance thing, obviously. It wasn't a money thing. It wasn't much of a scheduling issue, if any at all. It was just something I wound up not going to. And I fucking regretted it instantly. And I hate when I do that. I actually did that with something else, completely unrelated this weekend. Something that I wanted to go to that I wound up not going to. Just cause. And then of course, regret it right after. Sometimes you just gotta do the thing, man. Go to the thing, watch the thing, listen to the thing. Take advantage of those moments and opportunities when they arise. But I will tell you something that I do not regret, which is watching this comedy special. Ari Shaffir's Jew is available now on YouTube. I will link to it in the episode notes for you fine folks to watch and join the millions that have already streamed it. Ari Shaffir's Jew. Check it out.